within an established paradigm, and you make incremental improvements to work towards a goal that has already been established, and the management skills align towards transactional leadership. And transformational leadership is something that that is reflective of what is considered leadership in the 21st century. And it is thinking, envisioning something, and thinking or dreaming of having a vision towards an entirely new perspective and bringing about a metamorphosis. So if you are the skills that women have are they align with the transformational leadership. And you should be able to envision something, articulate your vision to the subordinates, and help them to embrace that vision and work towards it. So we call it the female leadership advantage. They have seemed to have more charisma and interpersonal skills and individual considerations that more than their male counterparts. By pleading to the human side of individuals, and sharing knowledge and information, and involving them and motivating them, they are able to help the subordinates to visualize themselves and align their growth as leaders, and that helps to give them a sense of belonging and sense of recognition, and their needs for self-actualization are satisfied. Now, when we see that women do have these advantages and they have the leadership skills right there with them, then what are the potential barriers that we don't see? That at the participation level, we see hundreds of women participating now, and the number is ever increasing, but we don't see it at the executive board, whereas that would really enrich the entire organization. So one major setback for women is that they are not able to get the advantages of strategic networking. They may have to work much harder to attain that kind of stature, but even if they do, they are not able to get advantage of that. So I would like to give a riddle here, mention about a riddle here. Many of you might have heard it. There was a man, he was going in a car with his son, and the car had a major accident. The man died on the spot, and the son was badly injured. He had multiple surgeries and injuries, and he had to be taken to the hospital, and he needed surgical intervention there, so complex that the senior surgeon was called. So the senior surgeon looked at the boy and said, "Oh my God, I cannot operate on this boy because he is my son." So who was the surgeon? Many of you may get it right, many of you may have heard it, but most of the people are not able to get it, that the senior surgeon was the son's mother. So these are the perceptions that we already have assumed, that somebody at a very senior level and where you need specialized skills must be a man. It is the fear within the women themselves that it is seen that 1 in 3 girls are afraid. The fear is such that when you are faced with a situation to lead, girls like to go back to their comfort zone, that we are okay as subordinates and that's how we're supposed to be. The prefrontal cortex in the brain it gets shut down, and it is the reptilian brain that takes over, saying escape, evade, flight, go away, escape that. So they evade leadership positions. They are okay in the subordinate zone. They're told that if you are a good woman, then you have to be gentle, caring, loving, kind, sensitive, emotional at times. But when if you cannot be, if you're a good woman, you cannot be a good leader. If you're a good leader, you have to be aggressive, adamant, pushy. You need to sometimes be repetitive and redundant, annoying, that you need to get work done and push your what you feel strongly about, your conviction forward. So if you are a good woman, you cannot be a good leader. You will be a bad leader. If you are a good leader, then you may be you will be a bad woman. It's an impossible dilemma. And then This is the kind of situation where we look up to the teachings of somebody like Mahatma Gandhi, who said that if you are in doubt, then ask yourself, um, will my decision help the most poor and needy person? And in an analogous way, the values of women, they come to the rescue. They rescue. Values are your shields. They're your strengths. If you are in a dilemma, if you're in a doubt, you got to ask yourself, is your decision going to do injustice to any fellow athlete or anybody in the organization or the face of the sport as a whole? If you feel that, and you look into yourself for your value system, you will be able to make a firm decision and stand by it. The presence of women is so important. The International Olympics Committee was formed to harness uh, the value of sport in the for the benefit of mankind, at the service of mankind. It was only after 121 years that Anita de France became the vice president of the organization. It's taken so long. Earlier, only men were participating in sports, and women were not even participating in the Olympic level. So, keeping all that in mind, in 1994, the dates were 5th to 8th May. Today's 9th May. So, the World Conference on Women and Sport was held in Brighton, and an international working group for women and sports was formed, and then 6 world conferences were held henceforth. And this led to the promulgation of the Brighton and Helsinki Declaration for Women in Sport, which was signed by 416 organizations, and they had guidelines for for various sporting organizations that women must get a safe and supportive environment for sports, and their rights and their dignity must be respected. Their knowledge, values, and expertise must be used. They must be involved at all levels, whether it is the middle level or the senior level, and they themselves must be made to realize the intrinsic value of sport to promote health and fitness. Because it is the women, once they are involved in sport, they will be teaching their children, and then that will manifest into the rest of the society. And it is amazingly, if it's only when the major sporting organizations support it, it can trickle down to the rest of the organizations and then the rest of the society. An organization like FIFA has not yet signed the declaration, and they are resistant, in fact, to gender equity at the highest level. They just have one token woman out there, and she's just there as a puppet. And the talks have done the rounds that FIFA would greatly benefit by having greater transparency at the leadership level. Even business and political science literature says that having women and in fact a gender balance at the highest level can make an organization less corrupt. It can reduce corruption and increase transparency, which is so much desirable. FIFA can take kind of motivation from the fact that the 2015 Women's World Cup had more than 1 billion viewers on television alone. So it has to come from top down, and fortunately the International Olympics Committee president, Thomas Bach, has supported the cause a lot, and he has done certain collaborations and participation even with UN Women. There is a project called One Win Leads to Another by UN Women, and they have a system in place, so it is very much desirable, and he's supportive of that. The International Olympics Committee has also supported quotas and goals and targets for having more women on board. But the problem with quotas is, again, there's the qualified and talented male can get outcrowded by women who are not that talented. They're not qualified. They have a system also for leadership training programs, because women who actually end up in sports are not from luxury background where they have education. They may be from a very rustic background. But women who are talented, they find it derogatory. They do not want to look upon themselves as an opportunity cost. And henceforth, there are certain organizations like the International Biathlon Union and the International Triathlon Union who have come up with major changes that they give equivalent prize money and media exposure to women's events. And ITU in fact has a kind of a subsidy system, like from every national federation there are two delegates who come to represent the country. If you get a woman representative, you can bring three. If you're getting two women, you can get four. So there is a kind of subsidy which allows the participation of women without crowding out men. So these are novel ideas. And the IOC has said that after 1991, any sport that needs to be added into the Olympic Games must have a women division, and that has supported the cause so much that even comparing with the 2016 Rio Olympics, the number of women events in the Tokyo Olympics, if that would have happened, would have doubled, and the female participation would increase by 45%, more than 45% actually. So I would like to talk about one of the very senior women leaders in sport. She is the epitome of women leadership, Jill Ellis, who gave 87.5% win rate and back-to-back FIFA Women's World Cup wins, and now she is the development director of the United States Soccer Federation. She has said that when she was growing as a leader, she had to lead from the gut, and now that she has had so much of experience and she has learned so much, she would like to mentor people so that and teach and give training programs about structured learning and leadership, so that the upcoming leaders in women's sports will have lesser hurdles. So I would like to kind of end with one thing, that leadership is like a diamond. Unless and until every facet of the diamond is polished and acknowledged, it will not achieve its fullest glory and shine. So leadership should have a diversified face from all facets of the society, and there should be no discrimination. And if this happens and every aspect is given weightage, even the women are given the due respect and their decisions are taken into account as much as the men's decisions, and they are accepted, then only the leadership will shine to its fullest extent and kind of radiate into the rest of the society. We want more participation at all level. Pyeongchang and Tokyo, they have famously low women leadership in all their organizations, and they are fighting to bolster their anemic economic growth. This is an excellent opportunity for them to include more women even in the preparation of the Olympics, and right up to the decision making level. That has a demonstration effect. Like we see in Norway, there are 40% women in the corporate sector at the executive board, and they see 40% women even in the National Olympics Committee board. I hope that we will have more leaders, not just at the participation level, but at every level, so that that perspective is taken care of. And I'm sure that having more women in sport will bring about greater harmony and happiness, because sports has its own values that creeps into every part of and every aspect of the society. So thank you very much, and sorry for the disturbance that was there in between, and you can ask me questions.
She is here for the question answer session. The house is open for questions. Honorable Minister. And I would like to hear a question from Kamalji. Yes, Balachandra sir, you can start, and then Kamalji sir can follow. Yeah. My question.
Yeah, no, I can hear. Thank God. No, yes, in the from 2015, the panel has banned female bodybuilding, which was too freaky, and yes, certainly no doubt about it that it was extremely detrimental. Now, the International Federation of